Hello, and welcome back to the Mid Am Podcast. I am half of the show, Tyler Munns, and on the other side of the screen for me is my good friend Nathan Furumasu.
Hello.
And this is the last episode of season one. We did it.
We made it.
12 weeks, man. We did it. Proud of us.
Yeah, man.
So I thought we'd kind of recap a little bit.
We're
Not so much
matching
recap.
tonight.
We are green and
We're
green.
matching
Wow.
tonight. Yeah. This has got that Paul Rudd meme all over it. Just, hey, look at us.
Look at us.
Look at us.
We not going to quite recap what we've already done. It's more of a look into the future. This first season happened to be just kind of in the doldrums of the off season, where we were just, I think both of us were probably kind of just looking for something to talk about. But as we jump into the next phase of the podcast, obviously, we're going to be heading into posting season. On the day of recording, it is February 22nd. This episode will come out sometime next week, which will coincide with posting season starting up here in the Pacific Northwest on March 1st. So we are heading, we're going to be squarely heading into the technical golf season here. So one of the things that we had done a couple weeks ago was we got together. I'm a member at a golf club because I'm fancy and also because it's relatively inexpensive and 12 minutes from my house, and it gives me an opportunity to play more golf than I would otherwise. But they recently installed a simulator with TrackMan. So we thought, hey, it'd be kind of fun to get some baseline statistics for the beginning of the season. And then maybe check in a couple times, like maybe once in the middle of the season, once towards the end of the season, and just see how we are progressing on maybe some of the things that we're working on in our swings and things like that. And so thought we would kind of jump into that, go through kind of that whole thing, talk about some of the things that we kind of gleaned from that session. It was interesting for sure. Talk about a little bit, kind of revisit some of the goals that we outlined in the first couple episodes of our season. We have some, one of the goals that Nathan had pointed out collectively for the podcast was charitable in nature. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And then we're just going to kind of look forward to season 2 and what you can expect. And, the fun thing is we don't really have that totally fleshed out yet. So we're just going to kind of riff on it and see what we think will work. And obviously you'll be along for the ride with that. But before we jump into that, hey, if you're enjoying the podcast, if you like what you're listening to, and I'd imagine if you are still here 12 episodes in, you do, please give us a rating, give us a little bit of a review on whatever podcast app you listen to us on. We would greatly appreciate it. If you haven't already, please go subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. All of these podcasts are simulcast. Not only can you hear our beautiful voices, but you can also see our beautiful faces if that's something you're interested in. So if you could do all of those things, we would greatly appreciate it. It would help support the podcast and all the things that we hope to do immensely. And at the end of the day, we're very appreciative of all of you who listen to us. And we are excited to see what we can, build going into season 2. So without further ado, let's talk about the TrackMan session that we did.
The old TrackMan. Well, let's see. I think first the main objective of the session was to go through. We didn't get to do quite as much as we'd hoped, but we essentially wanted to get baseline numbers, like you mentioned. So we went wedge, 8, 5, and driver. We had hoped to have maybe a few more in there, but that's okay. We can kind of extrapolate from there for kind of the main quadrants of the game, we'll say, at least as far as like ball striking goes. Yeah, we looked for, I think, predominantly just like, okay, how far do I actually hit this club in the air? Carry numbers. Um,
Yeah, I would
and
say so.
among other things. But yeah.
Certainly on the short iron, like the so just to recap, we both hit a wedge. I hit a 54. I think Nathan hit a 52.
Mhm.
Um, we both hit 8 iron. We both hit 5 iron, and we both hit driver. So obviously, I think for like the 8 iron, 5 iron driver, carry distance was an important factor of that. With the wedge, I think it was obviously carry distance, but also kind of an understanding what our the dispersion was. Ideally, the wedge is going to be the tightest dispersion of that grouping. Um, but also looking at, things like launch angle and just kind of really all the data points.
Yeah, I
As
threw up like attack angle, swing direction, face to path, club path,
Yeah.
face angle, which is those two make up face to path, sort of.
Hmm.
Um, speed, dynamic loft, which was a big one for us attention wise. We paid a lot of
Yes.
attention to that. Smash
Yes.
factor, but we didn't really pay too much attention to that.
Mm.
And then like left and right, so like dispersion
Hmm.
to left and right. Those were kind of the points that I selected when we were setting things up. I kind of just went for the heavy hitters, things that are. I mean, every aspect to that I think you need as far as like determining whether or not something was a good strike,
Yeah.
and then you could then base off of whether or not something was a good strike, then evaluate the numbers of the shot itself. So, yeah, I think you can pretty much get anything you really want worthwhile out of those numbers. Probably even less than that if you're adept at um,
Oh yeah,
at
certainly.
simulator numbers for sure. But that's what we're looking at here. Um,
So I'll start. So I started with a 54-degree wedge. Um, so my average attack, so we hit around 10-ish shots per club just to get a decent sample size. My average attack angle was down 4.3 degrees. I'd like to see that come down just speaking of like, hey, where would I like to see that go throughout the rest of the season? I'd like to get a little bit I'd like to get a little stronger angle of attack and hit down a little bit more than that. I'd love to be closer to 5. But I mean, it's probably splitting hairs a little bit. But just if I'm thinking about improvement, that's where I'd like to be. Swing direction was 3.8 degrees left, which was not great. I need to be much more neutral. Face to path was zero point 0.3 degrees left, so almost square, basically square. We'll just call that square, which is good. My club path was 1.3 degrees left. Um, I don't quite know how that relates to swing direction. I'm gonna have to look that up. Um,
hmm, hmm, I can
uh,
tell you.
oh, tell me, please enlighten
Yeah.
me.
Okay. So have you ever seen those guys who like take a hula hoop and put it down on the ground
Okay.
and
Yep.
are talking about like like this functional swing plane and showing that sort of thing, and they'll talk about like D plane,
Yes.
um, as in like how the club is moving. Okay, so face or club path is essentially the movement of the club head
Okay.
through impact. So anything in a descending angle, the center of the club head, or even maybe the center of the mass of the club, which is up the shaft a little bit, is moving in an in to out direction.
Okay.
But swing direction itself is the orientation of the hula hoop. So if we've got a hula hoop
Oh, I
that's
see.
oriented, let's see, I'm reversed for you. So if we're this way and you're catching it anywhere on the descending portion, you're going into out with the club path. But you could be into out club path and have a left swing direction, which makes you
I
net
see.
zero.
I see. I
So
see.
yeah, it's kind of the relationship between, so like the D plane, if you YouTube
Yeah. So
that
when
or
people say like
something.
exit left, you're like, oh, I
Right.
exit left, but your swing direction is still into out.
Is
Or
still
no,
into out.
your
Yeah, if you're
path,
catching it on the, if you're
your
correct.
path is into out. but your
Yeah,
swing direction is exiting left.
if you're catching it on the downswing. Yeah,
Okay,
if you have a negative angle of attack, the club head is always moving into out.
got it.
So yeah, swing
Okay,
path
okay,
into out. Yeah.
that makes sense. That makes sense to
Yep.
me. Average carry, and it was really just kind of like I try to feel like a kind of a 75-80% swing, very controlled, was 87, which felt good, about 90-ish yards. Dynamic loft, which I was very something I've been working on a ton. I am a flipper. So to have my dynamic loft on my 54-degree wedge be 40.5 degrees
Mm,
was, I'm happy about that. And so ideally on, especially through probably like 7 iron, I'd love to be 10 plus degrees down on dynamic loft. So my 7 iron is 34 degrees. I'd love for my dynamic loft to be 24 degrees or lower.
yeah,
That's,
and really, all that means is your hands are in front of it at impact, right?
yeah, shaft length.
Essentially, shaft length is kind of that's how that. For those who wouldn't know, dynamic loft, if it's negative, then it, or if it's less than the loft of your club, then that means you've got some measure of shaft lean, or you're coming in uber steep and still flipping. But you would
Which could be the
have
case,
you,
but I
which could be
wasn't.
the case, but yeah, but that's not typically the
Yeah,
case,
you
I would
you
say.
you
Yeah.
can you can kind of flesh out if that's happening.
Yeah.
And then my total like left to right was 7.5 feet left of target. So I was within basically 2 steps, 2 yards of like my target line, which I think for me, for a wedge going 90-ish yards, I can live with that. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, that's stellar. I'll hop in here. So my wedge, ironically enough, the most important thing that we just mentioned for wedges being left to right dispersion, I when I took a picture of my stats, I cut that criteria off in the photo, so I don't even have it.
Mm.
But I do know, I do. We both have remarked and remembered or we both remarked at the time, and I've remembered since that it was somehow, or not somehow, ironically, no, actually, not even ironically, just weirdly, my wedges were my worst dispersion.
It was
Uh,
peculiar,
Matter of fact, my 5 iron was probably a better dispersion, if not at least the same as my wedges, which um,
which is
good,
funny
good, good
because
for
like
me, I guess. But
well,
yeah,
watching you play, that's just like your wedges are dead on, when
hmm
like on the course, but it was just funny to see that happen on TrackMan.
I don't know. Yeah, it was a strange one. Let's see. My attack angle. I was looking for more like patterns and generalizations as I was looking over this data, and my attack angle is usually like for all of them. Like, oh, so wedges was 3 down, but then 8 iron was 2 down, 5 iron was 2 down. Actually, they're both 2.4, exactly the same on average. And if I look through like the individual numbers, they're all really consistently kind of like a little down, which
Yeah.
is I like that. I've always liked being more of a sweeper, a little bit shallower,
Hmm.
and less diggy. Maybe that's because we're in the Northwest and I
Diggy
have
is not
learned
good and soft. Yeah.
Diggy's not good. I mean, you're gonna end
Yeah.
up you're bound to lay the sod over it
Yeah.
sometimes, and it's an awful feeling. And I've just learned to be a little bit more of a not a picker, but like sweeping,
Yeah.
um, shallow angle. Swing direction was left on all of those, which again is okay and even desirable with irons when you're making a downward attack angle because the so long as the path is still into out, it nets out to zero. Um,
And
my
quick,
biggest yeah yeah yeah.
quick thing. One thing I saw, um, going back to the Ben Hayden episode, he posted
Mm,
something on Instagram recently where he's like, "Hey, if you see your divot is going to the left, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
mm,
If your divot is far enough ahead of where the ball was, that's just an indication of the arc of your swing. So that's just another
hmm
way of illustrating like what you were talking about earlier, where like if your path, if your angle of attack is down, you are swinging into out for the most part, and then your
hmm
swing direction can be left while
hmm
still having that kind of where you're like striking the ball on like the inside of the ball. So that's not like necessarily a bad thing. It's not an indicator of like you're over the top. It's just like the swing is an arc, and at a certain point
Hmm.
it goes left. It has to. You cannot keep going out right.
Yeah.
It has to go left at some point. So
Yeah.
that's just that was a cool
Yeah.
illustration. I never really looked at that, and so when you said that, that popped in my brain as kind of a way for me to like visualize it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think divots are, I mean, conventionally it was always like, "Oh, well, what's your divot look like?" I think that they kinda lie to you a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's tough to tell from that, I for sure. My classic face to path relationship was closed. Um, Always been an issue of mine, but that's been something I've had some recent, even just as recent as last weekend when we were on our Bandon trip, um, sorting out of just kind of a better understanding of what actual like a proper, more neutral release actually feels like.
Hmm.
And we'll get into that at a future date. But
Yes, we will.
essentially, classically, my release has been um, a high rate of closure, and so a closed face to path relationship. So the lefts. Um, yeah, I didn't have any too much as far as like things I was looking for with dynamic loft. I was always somewhat, at least, with a bit of shaft lean, and I was mostly looking for carry yardages. That's kind of my main thing as far as
Yeah.
like I want to know, like it's super easy. I've been on simulators and TrackMan enough to know it's super easy to get lost in the sauce and like chase swing speed or distance or just one particular number. And I wanted this time to be like, how can I make this as beneficial to my actual playing of golf as possible? And so I wanted to know, like, okay, I'm gonna swing at like playing speed, so not full tilt, like 80% at everything, and just see what that gives me as far as
Yeah.
like how far does this carry? Exactly how far does this carry? Um, and I wasn't too surprised, but
Mm.
and I think I was pretty close, but I was maybe half a club, I'd say maybe half a club shorter in the air than what I was playing all last year. So
Yeah.
that translates to a lot of being short on a lot of shots. Um, so it's good to know. It's good to just have those numbers like truly dialed, and that's what I was looking for. I think most out of this session.
Yeah, I think the other thing that like one is understanding the numbers. It's like, okay, what are your true carry yardages at a comfortable pace, for lack of a better term. The other
Hmm.
thing is like taking that data and then learning to trust it, and not to dive too much into the Bandon thing, but when we were on Monday, when we were playing Dunes, Bandon Dunes, we had it was the par three. It was like downwind. I don't remember which hole it was, but it was like you're hitting out
Hmm.
into the ocean.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know, it was probably like a two club win behind, and like
Yeah.
it was like 155 yards. Oh, 12. It was 12.
Hmm.
It was like 155 yards. And like I should have hit 9 iron. Should have hit 9 iron. I hit 8 iron because like
Yeah.
I was like, well, I was like, dude, like, I'm like, I can't trust that it's really gonna go two clubs further, and like I almost hit it into the ocean,
Yeah.
because I pured the 8 iron and it went 20 yards too far. And
Yeah.
so like part of that is like um, trusting that number to be like, I want to fly, even if the flag says 150, even like no wind, let's just say super firm greens. And I want to
Yeah.
fly this ball 135 because I know it's going to hit and release out to 150. Let's just say
Yeah.
that's going to happen. Um, so then it's like, okay, cool. Take the 9 iron, hit it 135, but don't try to like, don't have that 150 number in your head. Have the 135 number in your head and hit it to 135 and trust that it's going to do what it's supposed to do and release out to 150. Don't try to overswing and get it to fly 150. And like, I feel like that is something that even after understanding all of these like true carry yardages, like I think that's going to be a mental hurdle for me to get over, to be like,
Yeah.
okay, don't actually play the number, or don't play like the number that I'm shooting on my rangefinder, like play the number that I know is going to put me in the best position to have a decent putt at it.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, even is it one hole later, the par five, that we were both in the fairway and like we were dead into the wind then, and I think I remarked to you after I hit my third shot onto the green, I was like, I just hit a full tilt 7-iron from like
Oh,
137,
yes.
and I
Right.
pin high, and you're like, yeah, I know, me too.
Oh, dude, yeah,
Yeah,
I was like, it was like 150 to the pin. It was probably a 2 club win, maybe closer to a 3, and I was like, I just wailed on a 5 iron.
yeah,
I ripped a 5 iron, and it was
yeah,
the perfect distance. And
yeah,
like, it was like there was so much cognitive dissonance leading up to that point to where I just didn't want to trust that like 150 out, I need to swing basically as hard as I can at this 5 iron in order
yeah,
to get it to get there because it's truly playing like a 180. It's probably like 180 plus yardage, you know?
yeah.
Yeah, like that whole part of it. I mean, wind screws everyone up. That's the only thing that like stops pros from shooting 30 under, week to week is like you throw some wind in there and
Yeah,
it's hard, from a trust factor and just from like an understanding of like how the ball is going to react. It's crazy, but
definitely, definitely.
anyway, anyway,
Anyway, back to
so then we
TrackMan.
then we jumped into 8 iron. So I was 4.1 degrees down on my 8 iron, which that's great. Swing direction was 3.7 left, which is fine. Face of path was 1 degree left, so a little bit of a pull. Club path was essentially neutral. Um, Dynamic loft was down 10, so it was a 28 degree. My 8 iron is 38 degrees, so um, could
Hmm.
potentially deloft a tiny bit more, but I'm splitting hairs at that point. Carry
Hmm.
distance was 135, and then my right to left was 17 feet left, so within 6 steps, which
Yeah,
again from 135 yards, I'm fine with that. I can I can live with that. So I
yeah.
honestly like this is kind of where we're getting to the point where I'm like, you know what? I would really love 15 more yards. I would love to have my carry distance on my 8 iron be closer to be like 150, 155.
What was your
Um,
speed? What was your speed on those?
my speed, very comfortable 77 miles an hour.
Okay.
Um, I essentially need to add 10 miles an hour
Yeah.
to
I was gonna say,
everything
I
that I
think
do.
looking at my numbers versus your number, like we're really similar there. Um, but I'm at 83, almost
Mhm.
84, and my carry's 144,
Yeah.
145.
So I
So
just I need to
like,
add speed and a lot of it it's not so much that I can't do it. I know I can. I can
yeah,
swing the 8 iron 88 miles an hour. I've done it. I just don't know where the ball's going to go, and that's my
yeah,
problem.
it's just that
Um
comfort.
yeah. So
Yeah,
I just if I could get my 8 iron up to 83 miles an hour and I carried at my dynamic loft, I think if I were to add what would that be, 6 miles an hour. That's 155. That's a 155
hmm,
carry. That's fine. I can qualify
yeah,
for the mid am. I can play in the mid am at
for sure.
6,900 yards, hitting an 8 iron 155. Like that's not a
Yeah,
problem at all.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, there's not much difference in our numbers aside from I swing it a little faster and I carry it a little further. My right to left total average with my 8 iron was 1.4 feet left, which is kind of a ridiculous
Just dead on,
average.
dude.
Uh,
Just hit 8 iron.
yeah, I know.
Just
I'm
take
just gonna play
just
one
one club
one club
challenge, the
challenge.
whole thing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. I like that section of the bag quite a bit, honestly. Wedges I have always felt like I really need to go get dialed in on like lie angle stuff. I think that's
Yeah.
a lot of my issue. I've always just kind of played stock lie angles, and I've not ever had them checked. So I don't know what I'm getting. I don't know what I'm playing, but I think I'm
You got to
getting,
go
yeah,
flatter, dude.
I know I think I need to go flatter and I think I fight it. So sometimes they come out just dead left of where I'm looking. And then sometimes I kind of compensate for it and am too far right. But then once I get up into that like 987 range of the bag, I feel like my right to
You're
left
just
is a whole lot
You're just
better.
You're just flagging it essentially,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's
Yes,
all
I
you're
am. That
doing.
was
You're just hitting
that
flags,
was
man.
yeah. That was this. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Uh, um, cool. Let's see. My 5 iron. I'll just hop since my
Yeah,
7 iron
perfect.
or eight
Yep.
iron was really short. 5 iron again, like same kind of sweepy. 2.4 down. Face to path 1.7 closed. Path was a touch left even. So it was lefts and lefts. Um Carry was 182, which I was really pleased to see that. I was That's about where I have been playing it at. I've been kind of being like, oh, 5 irons like 185. It's it's a little shorter than I used to be, but I also think I can get that up from there a little bit. Dynamic loft was 20 degrees, which is solid, I think. I don't remember what my 5 iron loft is, but that's probably like 6 degrees down
Yeah,
or something.
your 5 iron loft's probably 25 degrees, somewhere in
Okay,
there.
5 degrees down, probably somewhere in
Which
there.
is,
But then,
I mean, for a
yeah,
long iron, I
that's
consider
yeah,
the 5 iron long iron. That's fine.
yeah, yeah. And so this is about the section of my bag where the dispersion right to left also starts to kind of open up again. So that was a whopping 24 feet off, which in the grand scheme of things is only 8 yards. Um, I feel like I should be able
Which
to hit
is,
greens pretty well
yeah,
from there as well. So,
you can plan
um,
around that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I
Scott
was,
Fawcett would be cool with that.
he sure would.
He should.
So my 31, so my 5 iron rather, was down 3.1 attack, which I'm fine with. Um, Swing direction is essentially mimicking everything else. Face to path was dead on. Path was a little bit left, a little bit more left, but only 1 degree. Um, Club speed though, so 80 miles an hour. So like this is where I like um my disadvantage from a distance standpoint becomes proportional or disproportionately like detrimental is as I get into the longer club. Like I can hit my shorter irons and my wedges like within a reasonable delta of someone who is like considered an average to slash longer player. But when I get into the longer clubs, this is where I really struggle. So like for my 5 iron to only go 3 mile an hour faster than my 8 iron, like that's not good. Now, granted, my 5 iron was technically a tighter dispersion than both my wedge and my 8 iron. And that's also a strength of my game. Like as like the on the longer clubs, incredibly accurate,
Yeah, super
like
straight.
super straight. Um, but I just like there's this huge, it's like, man, when I get it past 200 yards, it's like, well, can't really, it's like I don't really have a chance. And that's just not
Yeah,
if you're
I could hit
trying to
my
jump.
I could hit my hybrid. I could hit my 3 wood. I could hit driver off the deck. All of them,
Right.
same.
And
Yeah,
so it's like when you're trying to get into like competitive golf at a higher level where, you're playing courses that are going to be in that 68, 6,900 yard range, like you got to have something that's 225, 230 that you can hit with like an iron or at the very least like a high lofted fairway wood hybrid type situation. So that is something that is leaving something to be desired. So like I got to get my speed up,
yeah,
but that's just something I know I have to do.
sure.
Dynamic loft was also 20-ish degrees, so only down probably 5-ish, which again, actually no way, I'm trying to think. So if my 7 iron or my 6 iron is 29 degrees, so that means my 5 iron would be whatever, down 5-ish.
Hmm.
And then so my carry was only 170 with the 5 iron. Again, uh, whatever. If it goes
Yeah,
very straight, I
yeah.
know, and that's fine and that's great. It's just like at the end of the day, when you're trying to, if you're thinking about having 170 yards into a like a longish par four, I would much rather be hitting like a 7 iron from 170 yards.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
I'd love to be two clubs longer. So
yeah.
That's kind of what I gleaned from that. Like, I know I hit my long clubs pretty straight. I just want them to go farther.
Yeah, yeah. What about the big dog, the big D? I
The
shouldn't
big
have called it that.
dog, the big dog,
The driver.
the disco stick.
Yep.
So one of the things that we both kind of clocked was like, I'm losing distance because my angle of attack is too neutral, too shallow. I was only 2.4 degrees up. If I could get that up to like four-ish degrees up, or maybe even five,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna see 10 yards probably more carry.
Yeah, doing
Um,
nothing different.
doing nothing different. No speed
Nothing different.
increases, just
Yeah.
like the angle of attack needs to be better. And when I focused on that at Bandon, I saw some really, really like positive results. I really
Hmm.
wasn't too far behind both you and Logan, who, Logan has like if he catches one, he's a 175 ball speed guy,
Yeah.
and I'm
Yeah.
certainly not.
He's what, like 6'3", and you know, pretty
He's about
athletic,
six
and
four,
like he
two
can,
forty.
yeah,
He's got
yeah,
leverage,
he
but
can
at the
move
same,
it.
yeah. But I mean, he's like a 175, 180 ball speed guy. And
Yeah.
like, and you swing probably 10-ish miles an hour faster than I do. And I wasn't
Mm,
too far behind you guys just because I'm pretty efficient. I can be pretty efficient. So, you know, swing direction, face the path, club path, relatively, it's all of the same. My club head speed was only 100 miles an hour. So again, it's like, dude,
hmm.
if I can get that up 5 miles an hour, that's like 15 yards.
Yeah.
And then
Oh
if
yeah.
I increase,
Cause what was your carry?
my carry was 243.
Yeah, and smash.
Smash was 1.48. So
Yeah.
I
I mean,
can get a
so
little bit more efficient, not a ton more efficient, but I
yeah,
can get a tiny bit more efficient. But really, if I get my angle of
angle of
attack up a
attack.
little bit, um, and my speed up a little bit, it's like that 243 probably goes to 263.
Yeah, I mean, case in point, like here it is. My angle of attack is 4.8 up for
Hmm.
my average. Swing speed was only 103, so like not that much. 3 miles an hour faster is not a ton.
No.
And my carry was 251. So it's like, and so I mean, the biggest difference between the two of us in our numbers is just attack angle, and I'm 10 yards longer or whatever. So,
Yeah.
or just about. So,
Yeah. So I mean, like my biggest takeaway from really like the 5 iron and the driver was just like, man, I really do need to get my speed up. And it's mostly around mechanics and being comfortable with swinging faster. And getting to like getting the face more stable, less flip, a
mm,
little bit more stable. And like,
mm,
I have a blueprint. I know what I need to work on that. And it's just really going to be about practicing.
yeah,
But I will say at the end of the day though, one of the things that I'm really trying to drill in, and this has really nothing to do with the data, but it's more like, hey, you know what? With what I have right now, I think so mid-am qualifier is at OGA. They're playing it from the tips. That's 6,500 yards. Okay.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I think that with what I have right now, I could go out and shoot par from 6,500 yards. I know I can.
yeah,
I
yeah,
know for a fact that I can. So would it be easier if I hit the club 20 yards, hit the ball 20 yards farther on average? Sure.
of course.
Is it required? No.
Mm,
And I need to kind of really tap into that attitude, um,
yeah,
while I work on improving, just so that like I can,
yeah,
kind of move into this, because it's 60-ish days away qualifier. And I can probably add 3 or 4 miles an hour in the next 60 days. But I can't add 10. Um,
no,
but I kind of need to throw that out the window, I think, and just say, hey, like with what you have right now, especially with the work that I've been doing on short game and putting, which was like really what held me back last season, from scoring more consistently. Um, I could go out there and shoot even par, which would
yeah.
probably qualify by 4 strokes.
Oh, absolutely, Absolutely. Yeah, I think I had a similar takeaway, and I it's just nice to see it and validated on a very reliable launch monitor, and just saying like, yeah, okay, what I've got is, do I want to get better? Of course, but what I've got is enough. Like, um, I am enough to make a. We're gonna get those sweatshirts now. Yeah, so I would say that was also like a a, a large takeaway for me.
Yeah.
Um, I did do one other thing that I don't know. I don't remember you doing, but one of my goals for the year is to get my driver club head speed up. Just doing some, just because it's all pure vanity and because I want to. I
Yeah.
want to try and hit the 120 mile an hour club head speed mark. So I took what, four swings at the end of our session and just tried to ramp it up and get as fast as I could. I was kind of cruising speed, like 103, which is what I wanted to know, like playing speed, like if I'm just chill and just trying to hit, fairway finders or something. 103, which is fine. Yeah, I was okay with that. I'd like it to be a little bit higher, but whatever. That's why I'm doing the speed training. I did get it up to double digits. Um, of the
112. Yeah.
hundreds. So it was, I think, 111 point
Okay.
something. So yeah, yeah, sure, if we're rounding up, 112. So I got one up at that after just like three or four swings. I think if I'd have taken a couple more, I might have been able to get another mile or two
Yeah.
per hour. So that was kind of encouraging. Um, I think my top ever has been 113. So it's kind of
Mm.
cool that I'm like, oh, cool. I'm, you know, fluffy and inflexible and can still
Yeah.
move it pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, so good. I was encouraged by that, and I know what I want to do to try and keep pushing the envelope there. So, were there any
Um,
surprises that you? I mean, we kind of covered some of this as we talked through it, but was there anything that like jumped out at you, like, whoa, I didn't?
it wasn't so much a surprise as it was like, it was a, kind of stark reminder of like, hey, you know what? I am is I hit it as far as like I really do. Like it's like in the back of my
Yeah,
mind, it's like I know I'm not a long hitter, and then when you see it,
yeah,
it's like, oh, you're
yeah,
averaging. It's like when I swing out of my
yeah.
shoes and it goes 252 yards, you're like, ah, all
I
right.
mean,
So it's yeah,
yeah, that's sobering for everyone, though. I feel like we all, unless you spend a lot of time on a simulator and have a lot of data in this realm, we all go like, "Oh, well, that one time I hit my 8 iron and I absolutely, caught it
well,
on the screws,
it's
and it
it.
went 160. So I'm gonna play my 8 iron from 160 because I can
Well,
do it."
you know what? I've never had that issue. It's more with a driver where it's like you don't really care about carry. It's more about like how far it ended up. And so it's
Yeah,
just like, yeah,
yeah.
man, like I'll get out there and in the summer if I carry it 250, it could be a 270 drive. And then it's like I don't think of that as a 250 drive. I think that as a 270 drive.
Yeah, man.
But when you're really like trying to grind on the numbers and figure out like carry is what's important. Like rollout is so subjective to the day, turf conditions, wind direction. It's like there's so many variables.
Mhm.
It's like
Mhm.
that none of that matters. What really matters is like how far did I carry it?
Yeah,
And
landing
so like
zones.
to see that number on the screen, you're just like, damn, dude.
Oh.
But then what you have to step back and realize is like, okay, what is the average male amateur golfer drive the ball? It's like 212. It's like, okay, well, I'm almost 40 yards longer than the average player. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do I carry the ball 290 like other influencers? No, I don't. I
Mhm.
don't. Could I? Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
can, and I'm going to work towards it. But I I'm also pretty damn good at golf, you know? I'm
Yeah.
pretty decent.
Yep.
So I think to your point, like a few episodes when we're talking about hot takes, you're like distance is overrated. I think like from a mental health perspective, it's probably important to like have that attitude to say, yeah, dude, distance is a little overrated. It's like, dude, if you're carrying the ball 250-ish and I think really the 243 it was because my first probably 5 shots or so, I was like I wasn't hitting the ball super well. And then like my last 5 or 6, I was kind of in the 251 to 255 range. So I would say like it said 243. I would feel comfortable saying like, especially like in the summer when I'm feeling a little bit loose.
Hmm.
Um, and I actually can like see the horizon, which in my like that just makes a huge, can't tell you why, makes a difference to me. Um, I think 250 is probably about where I'm at. That's,
Yeah.
you can do a lot of damage with a 250 carry drive.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Um,
What about you? Anything that surprised you?
the dispersion stuff, I think, was what I was least expecting, but I also, like the under the cold analytical view of hindsight, it's easy to look back and be like, yeah, I do miss a lot of wedges from the middle of fairways or something when I really shouldn't. And so to see the dispersion right and left be so poor with my scoring end of the bag, that makes me want to investigate that. Because if it is, I mean, and I think it is, it could be something as simple as getting somebody to bend my irons a little, or my wedges a little bit, and just get a little bit better fit there, and have that clean up. That would be wunderbar.
Well, I've had my eye on a loft and line machine, so it might just be me. Might
Oh,
just be me,
okay.
dude. I've
I'm happy
I've
to do. Yeah, I'll drive up.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
um, what's your takeaway from that session? Like, what are you going to focus on moving forward?
Let's see. Moving forward, definitely still chasing the driver club head speed, which you know, um, I think I'm just gonna keep on keeping on, working on sequence, working on tempo, and really getting a better understanding of what a proper release should feel like.
Hmm.
I think the more I get that, the more I'll um, just get speed without really having to get much like stronger um, or actually physically faster. I think it's more you know appropriate effort. A lot of like what we talked about with Drew
Yeah.
Cooper, and just saying that like sequence and those things are king when it comes to producing speed, making the tool, the implement, work for you in the way that it's designed. So yeah, still gonna keep chasing that because I'm trying to hit bombs, y'all. um and yeah, I aside from that, like through the bag, though, I don't really feel like I need to chase much more distance. I think it's more going to be on that dispersion piece for me, especially the scoring end. I mean, I know I got to sort that out because I can't really expect to be under par, or
Hmm.
real, or be able to kind of like battle back in certain situations if I'm not taking advantage of the times when I do hit a good drive, or when I do play a short par four, or I'm in good position on a par five for my third kind of thing. Like if I'm taking those opportunities and then still hitting it to 50 feet and having
Right.
to, cross my fingers on a two putt, like that's just not a good recipe for scoring, because I'm taking what should be at the worst pars, especially for someone who considers himself a good putter,
Yeah.
and turning them into like potential bogey
Potential
opportunities.
bogeys. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's probably my biggest thing.
Yeah, I think for me, it's recognizing that a little bit of speed would probably do some great things for my game. I think that like on the positive end, like recognizing that my dispersion is like is a strength of mine. How straight I hit the ball is
It's
special.
enviable. It's enviable for sure.
Yeah, and so like um, going after speed, but in a way that's, like, not, at the expense of how straight I hit the ball. Um,
Hmm.
it's like really going to be like towing that line and finding that balance of saying like, hey, and I think a lot of that to your point, or to something that you said is like it like that comes from sequence. It's it's and going back to what Drew said, it's like a lot of people think of effort as like this, this like really hard, like, oh, from the top effort. And it's like, no, no, no. If you can do it at the right times, it doesn't feel like a lot of effort, but it generates speed at the right places. And so I think that is going to be a recipe for me to create more speed without detracting from my ability to hit the ball very straight, because I'm a 3.8 handicap, not because I hit the ball far. It's because I know exactly where it's going to go
Hmm.
7 to 8 times out of 10.
Hmm.
Um, and so if I go the Rory route and abandon all of that to chase speed, um, I'm not
You'll
going to win
still
any
go
more.
the you'll
I'm not
go
going
the
to win
Rory
any more
route.
majors.
You'll go the Rory route.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that was kind of my biggest takeaway. It's like, yes, yes, I do need to hit the ball farther. It is no question. If if I can add 20 yards to every single club in my bag, I will be able to compete at a pretty elite amateur level here
Hmm.
locally.
Hmm.
Um, if I do that and don't know where the ball is going to end up, then it's kind of all for nothing. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
what's important here. So that was kind of my biggest takeaway.
Cool. Moving on. Let's go
Oh, hey, you know
to.
what?
Oh,
We didn't get to this, but a lot of that is going to, you know what, a lot of the things that we've talked about in terms of improvement are going to take. Do you know what it's going to take?
practice.
It's going to take practice.
Practice.
And
Yeah.
speaking of practice, let's take a moment to thank the first sponsor of the Mid Am podcast,
Woo.
the Golf Box. Practicing with consistent
Yes.
setup and physical feedback is the best way to improve quickly, and the Golf Box provides the perfect station to do just that. Whether you are looking to stop coming over the top or ripping the club inside on the takeaway, like me, or you're just looking to groove an on playing swing with any club in your bag, the Golf Box is the best tool in your toolbox of improvement. And the Golf Box isn't just for the long game. Take it to the practice green and groove a consistent putting arc and length of your stroke using the included tees and pre-punched holes in the box. I personally love the ruler indicators that are on the box, which helps me kind of drill in a consistent ball position on full shots and like full swings and putts. So that's something that I use pretty much every time I practice, really just to make sure that my setup is very consistent, shot to shot. The team at the Golf Box has also put together an extensive array of instructional content to show you how to get the most out of your golf box. So be sure to check them out by visiting their website. That's www.thegolfbox. That's the golf and then boks.com. And then we'll also drop a link in the show notes of the episode. But it's something that I use. I know working on getting Nathan one. And
Hmm.
yeah, big fan of practice stations in general. But the Golf Box is truly the most economical way to be able to build out any sort of practice station that you're using to get better. So just wanted to throw a huge thank you to them for being the first sponsor of the Mid-Am podcast. Very fun.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited to get mine. I won't lie. Initially, I saw it and I thought, I don't need that. It's just a box. But then I went to the range like the next day and I was trying to set up a practice station and I was filming myself a little bit and I was like, well, that's completely different than the last time I filmed myself doing
Right.
this. So let me adjust things. And I spent like 15 minutes just trying to get some stupid alignment sticks like
At
put
the
in
right
the
angle.
ground at the
Yeah.
right angle. So I immediately thought, huh, I need one of those.
That's
So
exactly right.
I'm excited. So
Yeah. All right. So one of the other things that we had pointed out in our goal setting podcast or episode rather was Nathan had kind of put something on the radar for us, which I loved, was a charitable endeavor.
mhm.
So one of the things that I did last year was, one of my goals was, hey, I want to hit 100 birdies, and I did it. I actually crushed it, by the way. But this year we thought, hey, let's do it again because birdies are fun, but let's try to use it as an opportunity to raise some money for an organization. So our
Hmm.
idea is to do like a birdie-thon, like a walk-a-thon, but with birdies. Um, haven't quite fleshed out all the details, haven't figured out exactly how it's going to work, but the general
Yeah.
idea is we're
At
going to,
some point,
yeah,
yeah,
go
or at
for it.
some point we'll be taking pledges.
Yes.
Um, that will be essentially, just like a jogathon or walkathon. It's going to be some fiscal amount in relation to, each birdie. So whether that's
10 cents,
10 cents
50
or a
cents,
dollar or 50 cents or
$11.
whatever, and you can follow along with Tyler and I because we will be using his little birdie trackers throughout the season, and we'll just kind of tally it up. I think were we going to go through the post from the posting season to kind of put a time frame on it.
Yeah.
So
So,
starting March 1.
March 1 to November 30th.
Yep.
So I would imagine we'll kind of maybe grind on the details this week, and then next week when
Hmm.
we post episode, well, actually, no, next week when we record
Yeah.
um, season one. Well, actually, no, maybe the week after that, because season one or season two, episode one is an interview, which is really good. You guys are going to
Yes.
be like, it's really good. So
Listen
don't want
to
to
it.
spoil too much, but it's mid-am royalty is all I'll
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Um, but we'll have the details in the next couple of weeks, and yeah,
Hmm.
we would love for anyone to jump in. It's going to be for a really
Yeah.
good cause. We
I would
haven't
even
decided.
say, yeah, I would even say if you're pledging, feel free to somehow we'll figure out a way that if you make a pledge to pay a certain amount for, our birdie-a-thon, then you can also recommend some sort of nonprofit that you think the
Yeah.
proceeds should
Oh,
go to.
let's
And
crowdsource it, dude.
yeah,
It's not up to
and
us.
yeah, and we'll just take whatever has kind of the most the most suggestions, and we'll go with that. So,
Yeah. So there's some flexibility still in it. At the end of the day, all we want to do is we want to be able to give back. We want to be able to use our platform as an opportunity to give financially to a deserving organization. So that's our
mhm,
plan. It's gonna be centered around birdies so that we're incentivized more than just our score to go out there and go low. So
yeah,
that's on the
for the
horizon
kids or
for the
whatever.
kids, dude. Got to do it for these kids. So that's something that we're going to be that we're certainly going to
Hmm.
be doing. And we'll have some more details on that and how we're going to facilitate that because I got to do some research on how we're going to make that
Yeah,
work.
we
But
gotta figure it out. But at this
what's
point,
our goal?
it's
Our
a
goal is what? a
really good
thousand.
idea.
It's
It
a
was a
thousand
thousand
bucks.
dollars.
$1,000.
Yeah,
Okay, so we want to.
yeah.
I'd love to freaking crush that if we could.
I feel like
So I feel
that
like a
should be
thousand bucks is no problem. I would love to like
totally
absolutely
doable.
blow that out of the water. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but
If we have to, maybe I'll auction off some handmade leather goods or something. But
yeah, and I've
hopefully,
got two kidneys. Apparently, I only need one. So,
part of
but
your
I can
liver will
only do
grow
that
back.
once. So we got to be careful. Um, last bit of the agenda, season two.
Yeah.
Season two. So this is the end of season one, 12 episodes. We feel like we were going to kind of break everything up into kind of, quarterly deal. So season two. My idea was as I mentioned at the start of the episode, we've been a little bit in the doldrums of the off season, right? So we're just kind of trying to find stuff to talk about because the weather's been kind of poopy and haven't been able to play a ton of golf. Well, that's going to be
Mhm.
changing here soon. Tomorrow it's supposed to be very funny, and I'm gonna or sunny, not
Sunny.
funny. What the hell's wrong with me, dude? Tomorrow's going to be sunny and I'm going to be sick,
Uh-huh.
according to my boss. So,
Uh-huh.
I'm going to get out and try to play some golf. I think that, and I know that one of your goals was to play more golf this year. And so,
Absolutely.
what I would love to do in an ideal world is, if we're kind of breaking this up the month into 4 episode blocks, right? I would think 2 episodes. I would love to kind of be able to recap, um, what we're doing for practice, maybe recap a little bit of the rounds that we've played for score, just
Hmm.
to kind of keep up with each other on what we're doing. If we ever have the opportunity to play with each other, we can kind of recap that whole situation. And then in the kind of off weeks where we're not talking about those things, it would be like an interview, or we dive into a topic, like stats that we did the week,
Hmm.
yeah, that released this week. That would, an ideal world, that would be very fun. And then, or like,
Hmm.
hey, our abandoned trip, I think we're going to probably record one, potentially even two episodes, because a lot of stuff happened and it was very, very
There's a
fun.
lot to talk about.
There's a
Yeah,
lot to talk about.
there's a
So,
lot to talk.
so, that's kind of, yeah, I mean, that's kind of my idea is, I'd love to, not to like completely rip off what Chasing Scratch does. Because I've been listening to so much of the stuff that they do, and I just
Yeah.
like a lot of the format that they do. I think it's very intriguing. I don't think it's a zero sum game. I think there's plenty of slices on the pie for us to jump into that and say like, hey,
Hmm.
there's something intriguing about me explaining to you a round I played in a dramatic scenario, and maybe we put in some music, um, and vice versa.
Yeah,
So, what about you? What are you looking forward to in
sure.
season two?
I mean, I love that. Like you said, one of my goals was to play more golf. I wanted 25 rounds this year, which was double what I did last year. So I'm already three deep on that, which feels good. um, and as the weather gets nicer, I'm hoping to play more frequently. So it should be, we got a good trajectory on that. But yeah, I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, you know, why I would want to recap rounds, and partly, yeah, because it's the drama of it is kind of fun, and it has a narrative storytelling element to what we're doing here, and it but that's cool for like content and the podcast and all that stuff, and it's more fun to listen to for people, but also like for me, it I get more out of it. Then I get to remember the rounds that I played because they're documented. They're
Mhm.
encapsulated in our show, and I feel like that will be so beneficial to me, because I can talk about the things. One of the other things I was talking about with my goals was like processes and really nailing down like the things I'm trying to do while I'm on the course. Well, it's super easy to try something and then forget how it worked or how well it worked, or to just be like, well, that was okay, and then like next time not do that. But to sit down and like recount the story and talk about how those processes did or didn't work, that are going to be like a a podcast diary of sorts for
Yes.
me, and I think
Mhm.
that will be really beneficial to um, me in my efforts to kind of learn to score and learn to play the game of golf. So yeah, on the one hand, cool. It's a format that is really entertaining, but also like selfishly, I think I'll get more out of it as a player. And being able to remember my successes and failures a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I would also say that I think it's kind of like a chicken and the egg situation,
Mm,
so to speak. Like, I was talking about in our stats episode this past week that just launched, that when I was going through all of the golf metrics stuff, that like one of my takeaways was I'm not super um, diligent about keeping all the stats now, but some of those habits that I developed as part of being able to take record of all the shots that I needed to take in order to fill in the app and get all the strokes gain data, things like
mhm,
walking off all my putts, shooting all of my shots, even if it was like a 30 or 40-yard kind of feel shot, but still like shooting it and making note of like, hey, this is a 30-yard shot. This is a 40-yard shot. Like when you have that in mind, whether or not you actually follow through with that to say like, oh, I'm going to record all this and then punch it into the app later, to go through that process, it changes the way that you approach the game. Well, if you're going into a round thinking like, hey, I want to make sure that I'm very cognizant of all of my shots so that I can recount these later. You're going to be a
Mm-hmm.
lot more in the moment
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that you can recount those in an accurate way. Well, if you're in the moment, imagine you might play a little bit, potentially play a little bit differently, not better, not worse, can't say, but you're going to play,
Yeah.
you're going to approach that shot a little bit differently. If you're like, hey, I want to make sure I remember how I'm feeling. I remember kind of like the before, the actual like act of the shot itself, and then like my reaction afterwards. And it's if you're going into every shot with that intention, like how does that impact the way that you play? Is it different
Yeah.
than if you weren't thinking about those things? Maybe it's beneficial. Maybe it's detrimental, and we shouldn't do that. The only way we'll know is if we actually go through the process. But I would imagine it might
Mm-hmm.
be beneficial to
Yeah.
be able to say like, hey, I'm going to be very, very in this moment because I know that in a week or so, I'm going to have to kind of recount these things, to my buddy Tyler and the, hundreds of thousands of people listening.
Yeah. Yeah. We gonna be built different.
Different,
Different.
different.
Yeah, so no, I love that. And of course we still would love to have guests on.
Oh yes, certainly.
And also just the opportunity to geek out about stuff in the ways that we do. So yeah, I'm excited.
Well, thanks for tagging along with us on this 12th episode, the final episode of season 1. We are so very, I'm going to say, you know what? I'm proud of you. I'm proud of me. I'm proud of us for
Hey, look at us.
3 freaking months, dude. We did it. We
We
did
did
it.
it.
We did a full
Did it.
season, with plans to do so much more. We got a lot of good stuff in the works. We really want to grow this thing. So again, if you
Mm-hmm.
haven't already, please, 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 please go and subscribe to the podcast on whatever app that you use to listen to it. Please give us a 5-star rating. Please leave a review with words in whatever language
Mm-hmm.
that you speak. Those are all things that would immensely help us and support the podcast. You can find us on Instagram at Midam Podcast. You can find me personally at Fade and Fairway. You can find Nathan at Thistle Leather Goods. All of that information will be in the show notes as well as the music credits. Thank you all for tagging along with us for the first season of the Midam Podcast. We are so excited to what we're going to be able to bring you in the next couple of seasons. So please stay
Mm-hmm.
tuned. But until then,
Bye. See ya.